Yeah, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Transfer Talk podcast. My name is Pete Greaves. It's not actually. He's on holiday, would you believe? In the States, meeting Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, among others, and no doubt trying to find a TV to watch England get through to the final of Euro 2024 against the Netherlands. So by the time you've listened to this, England will either be at home and all of their players will be on the beach, or will be looking forward to the Euro 2024 final between England and Spain. But I'm not on my own. Oh no, because I am joined by a friend of the show and a Transfer Talk stalwart, it says here. Do you like the word stalwart? It is, before you answer that question, it is Sam Tighe, everyone.
Stalwart. It speaks to experience. I think it speaks to a steady hand in a time of crisis. I think that works for me. I'll take stalwart.
Just an odd word, though, isn't
Veteran.
It? It just doesn't... friend of the show. I think we should have just left it at that.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Friend of the show.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Sam, the stalwart. How are you?
I thought we were going to leave it at friend of the show.
How are you?
I'm very well.
And I've got to start, before we get onto the transfers, there's a tournament going on in Germany just now. What have you made of it so far? We're, as we speak, by the way, we've just seen one of the performances of the tournament from Spain. Just overall, what are your thoughts on it?
I've really enjoyed the tournament. I think it's been great, to be honest with you. Understandably, a little bit more cagey as we get towards the serious end. And I know that third round of group stage games, which carried a little less jeopardy than others, it kind of turned a few people off. I've seen a few people kind of turn on the tournament as it's progressed, but I don't really understand how we got from, opening round of we've got our football back, big Adam up front for Hungary, look at this, to this is the worst tournament ever. I'm not sure how we've managed to flip from one to the other in the space of 2 weeks, but I've certainly had a good time. Apart from when I've been watching England, it's been a bit dry, it's been a bit drab, but I'm gritting my teeth and we're getting through it. We're winning after all.
I like that phrase, turn their back on the tournament. Are they actually saying, no, Euro 2024, I'm done with you?
A bit. I mean, there's been a lot of complaining about how cagey it's been of late and the lack of goals. And as a result of that, I think there's been a little bit of rewriting of history at points, which tends to happen because of recency bias. And I do think that we were in the group stage. We were celebrating some pretty pure football, some exciting storylines. And we were celebrating a lot of long-range goals, a lot of crackers. And in a space of genuinely about 10 days, people have gone from that to, worst Euros I've ever seen. Football was better in 2004. May or may not be true, but I have enjoyed this tournament all the way through.
Okay, look, we could talk about the Euros for the next hour or so, but let's concentrate on transfers. Let's start with a move that has been completed since we were last on the Transfer Talk podcast. It is the biggest deal involving a Premier League club of the window so far. Mikel Arteta completed his move from Crystal Palace to Bayern Munich. Bayern will pay £50.8 million, including add-ons. I'm saying that like it's a big figure. I mean, to me, that is an incredible deal. And Arteta has signed a 5-year contract. Look, I say it's an incredible deal, but Sam Palace's hands were a bit tied because of the whole release clause situation. But overall, will they be a little bit content, as they can be, with this deal? They obviously would never have wanted to see Arteta leave, of course.
No, it's tough when your hands are tied by a release clause, but at least it is a pretty high release clause. Like, you say 50 million like it's nothing. It's not nothing, is it? I know we get used to dealing with...
If there wasn't a release clause, how much would he have gone for?
Yeah, I guess probably another 20 or 30% on top.
Yeah.
Or he wouldn't have gone at all, because Palace would have just said, absolutely not, we're building something here. So, tough to lose him, but £50 million is not nothing. 60 million euros. Sounds like it's even more, Dharms. Maybe go with the euros instead. That sounds like it's more, doesn't it? Look, you can do a lot with £50 million. A hell of a lot. You can strengthen 2 or 3 different areas of a team. And I don't think this knocks Palace off the wave that they've been riding over the course of 2024. Still got Oliver Glasner in charge, still building something. Still, Eze is there. Still, Mark Gay is there. I mean, look, if Eze goes, then you do start to feel some concern for maybe the project, maybe the excitement levels. But Palace fans right now will be thinking this is an opportunity to reinvest and make the squad stronger. And we can still go to the stadium and watch a Barry Eze do his thing. Because, yes, they've lost one of those players that you literally go to football stadiums to watch. He does magical things. But they have another. They have another to fall back on and to appreciate. And still, they get the opportunity to go to the market and strengthen.
Yeah, it's a good point you make. I mean, they'll obviously want to keep the likes of Eze, Adam Wharton as well, who's only been there a few months, Mark Gahey after his performances at the Euros. They will, of course, all attract interest in the summer. But it's good that you mentioned that, you know, some fans will go to a stadium and say, I cannot wait to watch him play. So just on Elise, yes, we're talking about a loss for Crystal Palace, but for the Premier League as a whole, it's a little bit of a loss, isn't it? It
is, yeah. It is, unfortunately. He's a player that the Palace fans go to the stadium and they can't wait to watch. He's a player that neutral fans or fans of other clubs turn on their televisions to watch and they can't wait to see. Because some of the stuff he was doing back end of last season, some of the creativity, some of the goals, just remarkable. But he always has been a remarkable player, even back when he was playing for Reading and taking some of the best corners and set pieces I've ever seen. He's always stood out for those reasons. So yeah, it's a loss. You can't get around it. But this is the nature of the beast, isn't it, for Palace?
Okay, let's move on to Manchester United. Sam, look, what could potentially be one of the sagas of the summer. And I know, speaking to people around United, they don't want to get embroiled in sagas. They've had too many of them in recent seasons. They've had Jadon Sancho, they've had Frankie de Jong with differing outcomes, of course. But they have made a second bid for Everton's defender, Jarrad Branthwaite. It was thought to be in the region of £45 million initial payment, £5 million in add-ons. Unsurprisingly, rejected out of hand by Everton. United now internally discussing, shall we go back in again for a third time and test Everton's resolve? It's our information that the valuation Everton have is £70 million plus. That's their starting point. Is that a realistic price? How good is he? How good can he be?
Well, I suppose it is realistic when you consider that Manchester United paid around this fee for Harry Maguire, who was a homegrown centre-back, England international, left-sided. So it's at this point where you do use these transfers as benchmarks, and given that everything in the world has only got more expensive since then, I think Everton are correct to point to that transfer and say, well, there's our benchmark, there's our starting point. And it's one of these moments here when Manchester United are unfortunately potentially sat there staring the consequences of their own actions in the face, because they set this market themselves with Harry Maguire several years ago, and now they've gone back to the well and they're trying to buy another very strong England international left-footed centre-back, and they're being quoted, well, around about the same price, I'm afraid. So that's that, and Everton have every right to set that price because they are no longer under any pressure to sell, seemingly, at least for this PSR year. So they now view him as not necessarily one of their biggest saleable assets, but just one of their biggest assets. And look at him, dominant box defender, brilliant from set pieces, defending and attacking. He's fast, he's left-footed, he's physical. You know that he is already Premier League attuned because he's just put in an amazing season for Everton. How good can he be? I think everything that I've just listed up as qualities, as traits, if everything goes well, we're talking about one of the best in the Premier League potentially in a couple of years. So that's why he commands such a high price. And United are now... I mean, what constitutes a saga here? You said they're not interested in getting into a saga. They'll be on bid number 3 shortly if they go back in. Yeah, but
what I'm saying is I've been covering transfers for a few years, and the Jadon Sancho one was a saga. I was mentioning him at the start of the window and on deadline day. Oh, could they go in with a last-minute bid? It didn't go. Frankie de Jong.
Yeah.
That was another one.
Yeah.
I don't want to be saying Jarrad Branthwaite's name in my sleep. Let's use that as the benchmark.
Okay.
If in a few weeks I'm saying to you, I woke up in a cold sweat because I was saying Jarrad Branthwaite's name in my sleep, then we know that constitutes saga.
Okay, so we're not there yet.
Not yet. No.
Okay.
Far from it. No, we're a long way from it. It's early July.
It's early July. Yeah.
Well, early to mid-ish July.
Okay.
Yeah. So look, it's clear Everton not budging.
Yeah.
But as I was mentioning before, United not want to get embroiled in long-term transfer sagas, what they're also trying to do is not really make it clear that they have a primary target.
Right.
So what they're some people might say Jarrad Branthwaite's their primary target, but at the same time, they're looking at Matthijs de Ligt. There are positive talks going on with Bayern Munich over Matthijs de Ligt. They've also agreed a deal with Lille for Leny Yoro, but all of the information we've got on him is that he's waiting for Real Madrid to stump up the cash because they haven't met what Manchester United, and we sometimes see that in transfers, don't we? Lille more than happy to accept a bid from Manchester United to put it out there. This is what we're expecting the price to be. They've got to be careful though, because he's in the final year of his contract, and so he could quite legitimately say, well, if it's not Real Madrid now, I'll just sign a pre-contract with them in January for no money at all. But I do want to ask you,
Mbappe, basically.
Exactly. But I do want to ask you about Leny Yoro, because he's a name that has been spoken about a lot during this transfer window. Not many people know too much about him. He's only 18 years old, but he's being described already as a generational talent. Is he?
He's very, very good, I must say. I saw him up close and personal against Aston Villa this season in the Conference League, and he had a bit of a tough time with Ollie Watkins in the Villa Park game, but did really, really well at home. And so I think you have to bear that in mind. He's still just 18 years of age. He has a lot of experience to gain, and some of the more wily strikers will give him a bit of a tough time with the movement and the strength. But overall, like what we've seen from him so far, it is, I don't want to use the phrase generational talent, but like it's very, very promising. And there is a scout that I speak to that covers the Ligue 1 beat in France, and he has said he's the biggest centre-back prospect that he's seen come out of France since Raphael Varane.
Wow.
So that's high praise. And when you consider the French centre-back pool and how they export over to the Premier League and how they settle in, you're looking at like William Saliba, Axel Disasi, Wesley Fofana, Benoit Badiashile, all various degrees of good or great or excellent, but they settle in very, very well. Well, if you're 18 and you're cleaning up in Ligue 1 as a centre-back, you are ready for whatever comes next. It's just a great pathway. And Yoro is quick, he's good in the air, he changes direction at speed really, really well, which is a really important trait when you consider Premier League centre-backs. And I think he's pretty good on the ball too. So, you know, with the usual knock of he's inexperienced, he'll have the odd bad game, the odd striker will give him a tough time. Everything we've seen so far in the context of an 18-year-old is incredibly promising. So I'm not surprised that these top teams are trying to get in there nice and early.
Great info on Yoro there, Sam. One player we do know a little bit more about is the other player that United are in for, and that is Matthijs de Ligt. Should United fans be excited about a potential deal for de Ligt, or do you have any reservations on their behalf?
I mean, I do have a couple of reservations about de Ligt, yeah. Overall, I think it's a positive move. Like, he's a good player, but probably a couple of things to note. And this isn't me saying that I don't think de Ligt's a good player, because I think he is. But first of all, he is a little bit on the slower side for a top-level centre-back. And when you consider the Premier League and the mould of player that plays centre-back for the top teams. So the list is, so let's go Saliba and Gabriel, Vardiol, Ake, Ruben Dias, Van Dijk, Konate. These guys, the athletic levels on these guys, recovery speed, strength, spring, everything is absolutely remarkable. Like, it's a completely different concept to almost anything else across Europe. And
how about, before you carry on,
de Ligt would stand out in that respect for being quite slow compared to those peers.
But how about if they were to pair him with someone like Alessandro Martinez? Would that... we always talk about historically. I know you're talking about today's central defenders, but historically, when you talk about the great centre-back partnerships, you've got Rio Ferdinand and Nemanja Vidic. Vidic wasn't the quickest, but Ferdinand was quick and read the game, and they had that chemistry. Could that be something that United could be looking at and thinking, actually, the chemistry between the two players would make this a great centre-back partnership, even if he isn't as quick as some of the other ones? I
would say yes, but they're also seemingly targeting Leny Yoro, who does have those modern traits of recovery speed. So this is where I get a little bit confused as to the process. Like, I don't know how you end up in a situation where you want both de Ligt and Leny Yoro, given that they have fundamentally different skills and strengths. It might just be a case of, we're running out of centre-backs here. Like, Johnny Evans can only play so much. Raphael Varane is gone. Lisandro Martinez is super injury prone.
Would you say then Branthwaite and de Ligt would be more comparable with each other?
De Ligt is Branthwaite but slower, but then obviously de Ligt is far more experienced.
So what I would suggest then is, because what I have been hearing about Leny Yoro is a lot of these clubs in Europe and in the Premier League who are after him haven't necessarily been focusing on him when they've been looking at what they want to do in the transfer window, but because of this whole generational talent and He's 18 years old and there's a year left on his contract. It just seems a unique deal to do because let's get him in.
Yeah,
because
do it while
he
you
is
can.
that good.
Yeah.
Whereas their thinking overall might be, we need a defender that's going to do this and this. Leny Yoro may not fit what they want to do, but simply because he's that good, clubs are thinking it's too big an opportunity to pass.
Of course, and to expect Leny Yoro to step into a Manchester United defensive line and start 38 games next season would probably be a bit much, So that's fair enough. If you're looking to future-proof, some foresight in Man United's recruitment wouldn't be a bad thing whatsoever. But De Ligt, like I am being nitpicky here with De Ligt. I appreciate that I am. I just think that it does stand out to me a little bit as a little bit on the slow side when you compare him across his peers. I do get a little bit wary of like a top level player who gets passed between a lot of top level clubs. I don't have the answers, but why would he be on his fourth super club in the space of 5 or 6 years? I appreciate the Ajax move. Maybe take Ajax out because that was the big move to Juventus, but Juventus to buy into Man United in the space of 2-3 years. I always ask why. It just piques my curiosity as to why that would be the case. I don't have the answers for you, Dharms, but I always ask why.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that one pans out, because it's clear that United have an open race with regard to centre-backs. They're looking at 2 or 3, well, 3 that we've actually named. There could be others.
So they're trying to strengthen their own position by saying we're not tied to anyone in particular, is that right?
I think so.
Okay.
They've been burnt before. So they don't want to be in a position where it's Branthwaite and that's it.
Yeah.
Because Everton will then smell, well, hold on. Whereas, are they maybe sending a message to Everton by going for these other players? And I'm not saying that that's not genuine interest, because there obviously and clearly is.
Yeah.
And there are positive discussions with buying over De Ligt, and they've agreed with Lille, however likely or unlikely that deal is going to be. But that'll be an interesting few weeks, I think, now with regard to United and the centre-back situation. At the other end of the pitch, a signing does look closer, is Joshua Zirkzee from Bologna. Extensive talks have taken place with his representatives. We think there's a broad agreement now with his representatives and the player himself. I have been talking about this one for a few weeks, though. I suppose, Sam, this is just the joy of transfers.
This is not the joy of transfers. This is the terror of transfers. Joshua Zirkzee should have been in the Milan shirt 4 weeks ago. Yeah. That was what was supposed to happen this summer. That was what it was looking like early in June. But, you'd think a release clause of 40 million euros or so would make it easier, but it's far from it when you wrap in the agent commission, which has caused so much trouble over this transfer. Like, checking in on this one in early June, I remember when Milan got linked to Matthijs and they started talking about right-backs, I checked in on the situation. They had bids going in for Matthijs and bids going in for Emerson Royale. I checked in and said, how likely is this to happen? How quickly can this happen? The response was, this can't happen until Milan have a striker. Striker is the priority. And Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the great Zlatan, is advising transfers to Milan's hierarchy this summer, and he chose Joshua Zirkzee as the player to play up front for Milan. Now, you would think that this would seal the deal, but seemingly this agent's commission has proved so troublesome. I've been told it's in the region of 10 million euros or so. Is that what you've heard as well?
I've not got information on that particular side of it. I just know that they've been speaking to his representatives for a long time, only because we knew that they were going to meet the release clause. Now that they've got the agreement in broadly speaking, with the representatives and the player, is actually the case now that United are deciding whether to go lump sum with the release clause, in which case the deal will just get done, because they don't actually have to speak to Bologna, or they could negotiate the release clause with Bologna. Now, when I say negotiate the release clause, people immediately think they want to get him for less. That's not necessarily the case. They could suggest paying more than the release clause in exchange for favourable payment terms. So the direction of travel on this one, I don't want to say that it is going to get done because of the complications associated with it, but the direction of travel suggests that United are getting closer to signing Joshua Zirkzee.
It's been a troublesome one for sure, and the fact that he got a late call up to the Euros has only added more confusion. He was originally not in the squad for the Netherlands, then there was an injury, a dropout, and he got called up. That If a player's not at the Euros, this all becomes infinitely easier. He's still in the tournament. His team have reached the semi-final. He's played about 4 minutes of football, but that's irrelevant. He's in the camp.
Created a big chance as well.
Yeah, but it's just made it all very, very difficult. So I'm in the see it to believe it camp on Joshua Zirkzee moving clubs. I'm sure it will happen somewhere along the line this summer.
Yeah.
But this one has actually been keeping me up at night.
Okay, so you're gonna class this as saga, but if we are saying, this has taken a long time to happen because we have been speaking about it every day, will he be worth the wait from what you've seen of him?
He's an interesting one, isn't he? His career hasn't exactly quite gone to plan. When coming through at Bayern Munich, you're thinking, right, Lewandowski heir, superstar signing. It did not happen. He's had to take a pretty circuitous route to get back to the top via the Belgian Pro League. Hatful of goals for Anderlecht. Then he signs for Bologna, does really, really well, but didn't score that many goals last year. And when you watch his shots and you look at his shot maps and you watch his goals, he's consistently dropping off the forward line, wide of the forward line. He's working really hard to link play, which are all great attributes. But what it resulted in was taking him away from goal, and he didn't put himself into too many goal-scoring positions or not regularly enough and didn't score that many goals. So the Man United striker is expected to score plenty of goals. So I think Zirkzee is a really good footballer. It's taken him a little while to get to where he probably should have been a couple of years ago, but he's getting there, and I'm a fan. But I am not expecting him to walk into Old Trafford and score a hatful of goals from day one. And that's not just because he's a young player, but because he actually still hasn't quite developed that side of his game, at least in a top 5 league scenario. So I'm a fan, but just as with Rasmus Højlund, just give him a little bit of time and a little bit of patience.
Yeah, be interesting to see how that dynamic will work, particularly with Højlund there. Just before we head to a break, Sam, let's talk Arsenal. And not long after we recorded last week's episode, I know, law of the sod, Arsenal confirmed the permanent signing of David Raya from Brentford. The total package, if you look at it, and the loan and the permanent deal is around 30 million because it was £3 million for the loan fee and the permanent deal was worth around £27 million. This feels like a win-win-win for everyone, for Raya, for Arsenal and for Brentford. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, they know exactly what they're getting. They've just had him for an entire year. I think by about November, we weren't really talking about Ramsdale Raya anymore. His performances after a bit of a shaky start had reached the point where no one was really interested in talking about whether or not Raya was the right man for the job, because he clearly was. He was playing well, lasted all through the season. He seems to have a really strong relationship with Arsenal's goalkeeping coach and with Mikel Arteta, who the two themselves are linked very nicely. So there's clearly a want to work together, to continue to work together, clearly a good relationship. That can only be a good thing. I don't think it's a ton of money, but it's not exactly nothing, is it? And for Arsenal, there's no risk here. They already know what they're getting. They had it all last year.
They're also looking to strengthen in defence, so the players in front of David Raya. And I always notice that Arsenal, when they go in for a defender, they like a versatile defender, don't they? Ben White can play at right back. He can play in central defence. Jurrien Timber, who
all the way across,
will be the old cliche, will feel like a new signing when he does play. Again, the next name on the rank is Bologna's Riccardo Calafiori.
Yep.
He seems to be the primary target. All the noises are that he wants the move. Arsenal want the move, and it's just the case now of the clubs thrashing out and agreeing a fee. He did impress a lot of people at Euro 2024. I know it was quite a brief stay at Euro 2024, and if you put 2 and 2 together and say, well, he was missing against Switzerland, and that's the reason they lost. Maybe that's not.
Probably not.
But what would he bring to Arsenal, do you think?
Look, he's had a fantastic season with Bologna and a fantastic Euros, and I think it's really important for people to understand that this isn't a tournament signing. Like, he had a great 23-24 campaign, was fantastic throughout. So it's not just based on those Italy performances, but obviously the wider world did wake up to him in that sense because of those performances. And Arsenal presumably here are looking at him as their left back, the role that Jakub Kiwior has been playing, who is also a centre-back playing out on the left, which is essentially what Calafiori is. 4 years ago, Calafiori was a flying wing-back. He's 6'1", 6'2", long stride, was flying up and down that wing, and he had a terrible injury that set him back. I don't think he played football for about a year or so, and that's why he ended up taking a bit of a circuitous route back to the top again as well. That's why he ended up at Basel. before he ended up back at Bologna and now back in the limelight. So now that he's back and now that he's fit, he is morphed into a wing-back who has been converted into a centre-back who can also just play as a full-back. And Arteta's, like, all of the sirens in Arteta's head here were just going off. That is perfect. That is exactly what he wants. It is the appearance of 4 centre-backs in the defensive line, except that he can push into midfield, he can overlap, he can underlap, he can do all of those things. Calafiori is brilliant.
Wow. Well, if it does happen, Arsenal fans, something to look forward to there. It could be a busy summer at Arsenal just generally as well, particularly departures. We're expecting Eddie Nketiah to leave the club. We're expecting Reiss Nelson to look at all of his options. These are players who signed contracts relatively recently, but just not getting the game time for whatever reason, their own form, the players that have come in, the formation that Mikel Arteta wants to play. On top of that, Sevilla advancing in talks for the signing of Albert Sambi Lokonga, Lazio in talks over Nuno Tavares, and then the interesting one that I do want to ask you about, Emile Smith-Rowe. Now, he wants to assess all of his options. His primary motivation is regular first-team football. He's not going to get it if Martin Odegaard is at Arsenal for as long as he's there. So, as much as Mikel Arteta likes Emile Smith-Rowe, there's probably an understanding at Arsenal that he's going to need to move away to get first-team football. He did look destined, didn't he, for a really good career at Arsenal. The Arsenal fans were singing a song with him and Bukayo Saka together. It was all going well for him. It could be some signing for Fulham, though, if they get him. How would you see his role at Fulham and his career developing there if he was to go?
Yeah, it's a shame it hasn't quite gone to plan for him at Arsenal. And he was held in a similar regard to Bukayo Saka at one stage, hence the song where they're both linked in. And the idea behind that song is that they'll be successful together for a long time and they are Hale End Academy graduates and the club can celebrate them. Injuries, unfortunately, have hurt him, literally. Martin Odegaard, being world class, has also just crushed his playing time. There's a part of me that's still a little bit surprised that they would be willing to sort of send him away when you could equally make the argument that Fabio Vieira could be moved on. But then the other cynical part of my brain says, well, Emile Smith-Rowe is pure profit. And it might just help them fund, if they can shift on 3 or 4 of those players, the guys you mentioned, Nketiah, Reiss Nelson, Smith-Rowe, they're all pure profit. And what that can do for you in terms of making one massive signing towards the end of the window. We don't need to cover it, but it can do a lot. So it's a shame. Look, Fulham are having a difficult summer again. You know, they're fending off interest from Marco Silva from Saudi Arabia. Looks like it's going to be successful. He's going to stick around, which is a huge relief. They're losing João Palhinha, who has been described as the best player to wear a Fulham shirt in quite some time by a couple of my friends who support them. That's a big loss. Willian is also gone. Bobby Reid is gone. They're losing players here. And so picking up someone like Emile Smith-Rowe, who was really exciting, homegrown, and just like a really genuinely good footballer who just needs a bit of rhythm and a bit of momentum, I think that's a great start. And I think that will actually do a lot for the mood of the fan base, who are probably feeling a bit like, well, who's dropping out next rather than who are we signing next? Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting time. You say Fulham and Arsenal, you just get the feeling that they're starting to warm up in this transfer window. Okay, let's take a break there. When we come back, we'll be talking Aston Villa, Tottenham, West Ham, much, much more. Plus, there's a decision to be made for one winger who's heading to the Premier League. But where will he end up? Stay with us. Yeah, welcome back to Transfer Talk with me, Dharmesh, in for Pete Greaves, who is loving life in Disneyland. Not you. Everyone, whenever I said Disneyland, actually, people were saying, what, Euro Disney? No, he's actually gone original.
Yeah, the main one, the big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that Disney World or is it still Disneyland?
Disney? It's a magical place.
What we mean is it's the one in Orlando.
That's the one, yeah.
The big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the voice you're hearing there is, of course, Sam Tighe. We started the podcast with news of the biggest outgoing of the window so far from a Premier League club. That was Michael Olise from Crystal Palace to Bayern for £50.8 million, or as Sam would like to say, and just to give a bit of comfort to Palace fans, 60 million euros.
It just sounds better.
Yeah. The 60 million euro man. Well, the biggest transfer fee spent by a Premier League club so far this summer also went through this week. Can you guess who that was?
I know who it was.
All right, okay.
I don't need to guess.
Okay, it was Max Kilman, £40 million from Wolves to West Ham. He signed a 7-year deal. Sam, this one did look inevitable once the interest was there, and more or less once Julian Lopetegui had become the West Ham United manager. Who's the big winner out of this? When you look at where he's gone from, where he's gone to, and the fee that we're talking about as well.
Let's ask you a question before we go into this. 7 year. I thought the 7-year deal thing was not allowed anymore. Was that what happened?
No, you can sign a 20-year deal if you want.
Because Chelsea put all those players on 55-year deals, and then there was a clampdown.
No. So you could join Chelsea today and sign a 30-year contract.
Oh, okay.
But what I think was being clamped down upon was over how many years you can pay the transfer fee.
Right. Okay.
So if you had an 8-year contract, Chelsea were going to pay the transfer fee over 8 years of that contract.
Right.
I think that's been limited now to around 5
it's
years, if
5
I'm
years.
not mistaken.
Amortization limited to 5, but you can still sign for life if you like to. Okay.
If they offered you that,
they do. Yeah. Well,
I'm not sure the contract you're on with Transfer Talk, by the way. I think yours is pay as you play.
It's not a 7-year deal. No, not at all. Nothing close. But yeah, Kilman, I mean, he's reuniting with a former manager of his in Julian Lopetegui, which immediately to me always stands out as a good thing. There's no risk here in terms of you don't know what you're getting. You know the player's skills, you know his weaknesses and strengths, you know his personality, which is really, really important too. And Kilman's been a senior presence in that Wolves side for a long time. He's also frankly very good at football. I wouldn't say he's exceptional at anything, but he's clearly good or very good at just about everything, which makes him a really solid all-rounder. Again, a nice left foot on him, which makes him a little bit of a precious commodity. So I think everyone's happy with this. You described David Raya as a win-win-win. I'd be more or less willing to call this one the same.
Okay, good.
I mean, if I'm being super nitpicky, it's 5 million too much. How's that? How's that?
Max Kilman listens to this, yeah.
I'm sure he does.
I've been reliably informed. I want to ask you about Julian Lopetegui, because when it was being mooted originally that he was going to become West Ham United manager, there was a little bit of pushback from a certain section of West Ham United fans. What's your take on it? Should they be happy about this appointment?
I think it's a good appointment. I think he's a very good manager. I know he's had his ups and downs, but with the exception of people like Pep Guardiola, I mean, who hasn't, frankly, in the managerial game? It's crazy. I've seen some Lopetegui sides play some really good football, specifically in La Liga. He was short-lived at Real Madrid, but some of the football they played in that short tenure was very good. Sevilla, he did a very good job. I think for the most part at Wolves, he was very solid, if not very good. He wasn't fired because of poor performance. He ended up, I believe he ended up just departing because of a disagreement in how much could be spent, because Wolves were sticking very rigidly to the PSR deadlines and restrictions, and he wasn't happy with that. In the end, Wolves avoided points deductions as a result, so they were smart to do so and say, sorry, if you don't like it, then we're going to have to go somewhere else. And I know that some West Ham fans were still pretty unhappy to see David Moyes leave. I think the other West Ham fans were probably hoping for a free-flowing possession coach like Roberto De Zerbi. How successful would the squad be in trying to transition from Moyes to, for example, De Zerbi? It's probably a big challenge to do in one summer. Is a halfway house a manager who kind of sits almost in between them on the scale, like Lopetegui? Is that a good idea? I would suggest yes. So I'm a fan of the appointment.
I'm actually going to just go back to Kilman and call it a win-win-win-win, because there's a fourth win, and that is Maidenhead, because they sold Max Kilman for £40,000 in 2018, and probably just, let's just stick in a sell-on clause in there. Yep. Probably not thinking what was going to happen, even though now they'll say, we always knew it was going to be amazing. And initially we thought that sell-on clause was 15 to 20%. I think that might have been negotiated down a little bit to get this deal over the line, but nevertheless, we think that they may have made £4 million out of this deal, which
so that's a 10%.
For a club like for a club in the non-league could be the difference from, I don't know, maybe semi-pro to going full-time. It could even be the difference for that, but it's going to look after them for a few years at least. Anyway, I just want to stay with West Ham, Sam. And news yesterday that we brought you on Sky Sports News that they're interested in the Aston Villa striker Jhon Duran. Now, we know Chelsea were interested earlier on in this window. Would he be a good fit for you? Every time I've seen him play, okay, and I'm not talking as an expert, but every time I'm thinking, this guy has got something.
Yeah. He's got something. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You know, like he's the ultimate chaos merchant of a footballer. It is remarkable to watch him step onto a pitch, often as a sub, and just ruffle everybody's feathers. He's a whirlwind of a striker, and you can see that he's got something, because sometimes the ball falls to him and he hits it so hard you swear if it hits the crossbar it will snap it in half, and that is talent. The ability to execute that kind of shot, generate that much power from very little step, is not many players have that. He has some really special traits. He also has some rough edges to his game. Like, he comes on and he often, accidentally elbows someone in the head in an aerial duel, and he gets booked most of the time he steps onto the pitch. And that's why I call him chaotic, because he's great fun. He is a whirlwind. There are some really good bits to his game. There are some extremely unrefined bits to his game. Unai Emery clearly didn't really know what to make of him, because for 18 months he was like, I could start you. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. He just clearly wasn't quite sure how to get a grasp on him. I noticed that the difference between him and Ollie Watkins was coached to stay in the very central column of the pitch under Emery and be the reference point for the team, whereas Duran would frequently dart wide, run the channels, end up in the corner flag chasing the ball, because he's such a terrier and he has such energy and enthusiasm. So that's when I say rough edges, that's what I mean. But there's something in there. Like, Villa will probably be quite happy to get, I saw the last report at £35 million-ish. Not even sure if that's going to be enough. They'll probably be quite happy to take £35 million for a backup striker. And they'll probably walk out of that thinking that's a good deal. But in the back of their minds, they'll be probably aware that they might see Jhon Duran in 5 years looking like a genuinely brilliant striker who they will rue letting go. He is that kind of player. It goes one way or the other.
Yeah. It's been a busy summer for Villa so far. It's set to be a busy summer for Villa for the rest of this transfer window as well. One intriguing potential swap that has been mooted has been Jacob Ramsey to Tottenham, with Giovanni Lo Celso and cash going the other way. The information we have is that Tottenham are still exploring this potential deal. No, I haven't said Villa are exploring this potential deal. I'm saying Tottenham seem to be the main driving force behind this deal, which will probably answer the question in who would get the better deal if this deal was to come to fruition.
Did you say Lo Celso and cash?
Yes.
Do you mean Lo Celso and money, or Lo Celso and Matty Cash?
Very good.
I'm actually genuinely asking
money.
You that question. Okay. I didn't know what you meant. Oh wow, okay. Matty Cash has been thrown in. Right, so Ramsey is becoming a very complicated potential sale for Villa, because they have to look after their homegrown spots for the Champions League squad. They don't have very many. Do they have any beyond Ramsey? I mean, Cameron Archer is back in the fold, but they sold most of their academy talent last summer to help meet PSR requirements and to fund the summer. So that was when Archer left, that was when Aaron Ramsey left, that was when Jadon Philogene left. They all departed. You have to have some homegrown talent in your Champions League squad to meet the requirements, and Jacob Ramsey is their only shot at that so far. So now that Villa have met the PSR requirements for 2023-24 without selling Jacob Ramsey, who, as far as I'm aware, they were open to it because of his injury-hit season, they were getting nothing near what they wanted in terms of value. This is not a sale they make lightly, not only because of the fact that he is a boyhood fan of the club and it means a lot to have him in the squad, but because if they sell their one remaining homegrown talent, they're just shrinking their availability of squad for the Champions League. Lo Celso has worked with Unai Emery before at Villarreal. He was actually very good for them. Actually, I think his best years were probably at Real Betis, but he was pretty good for Villarreal.
I remember him at PSG as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly a good player. Hasn't had much of a look in except for injury crises under Ange Postecoglou. It's probably not a deal that Unai Emery would be screaming to make, but it could be one that suits both clubs in a way towards the end of the window. I don't think Villa can actually afford to lose Ramsey now that it's not a financial requirement to do so.
You just mentioned Jadon Philogene there in passing. Now, it seems he's got a decision to make again this summer. Ipswich have agreed a deal in principle for the player who's now at Hull, £18 million. Everton have also an agreement in place. We're hearing reports that Aston Villa have triggered what they inserted when they sold him to Hull City, which is a matching clause, which I don't know whether that will make much difference anyway, other than give Jadon Philogene a decision to make. Which club would be best suited for Jadon Philogene moving forward now?
Well, I'm sure Villa making the Champions League makes it a very attractive possible return for Philogene. He had a really good pre-season last summer for Villa, and I expected him to be part of the squad, again, because he was homegrown and they had a quota to fill for the Europa Conference League. But reportedly, he wanted some assurances over some playing time. He wanted to see a pathway. They weren't necessarily able to give him that. They just signed Moussa Diaby for £50 million. I mean, it gets tougher and tougher as you go. So he decided to leave. And with that move, he clearly had playing time in mind. So you look at the cast of clubs that you've just described. Where's the playing time? It's Ipswich Town, isn't it? It's presumably at £18 million for a newly promoted team. This is a week in, week out starter. This is Premier League exposure every single weekend. So if he's still got playing time on the mind, that's the move. But if he's been enchanted by the Champions League anthem, as many players are, then maybe, just maybe, the Villa return is on. We'll have to see. I mean, this is... Not many players get 3 or 4 clubs to pick from, do they, in the summer? Legitimately, 3 clubs have bid, who do you want to sign? That's quite rare.
Yeah. Before we go, Sam, let's quickly talk Nottingham Forest. They do have a new goalkeeper. They've been playing musical chairs with their goalkeepers.
It's not a summer transfer window until Nottingham Forest have signed the goalkeeper.
Yeah, and they've signed Carlos Miguel from Corinthians. He signed a 4-year deal. What do you know about him? How good is he? And is he good enough to displace Matt Sells?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know Carlos Miguel from Corinthians. It's a €4 million deal for a Brazilian goalkeeper I haven't seen. You finally asked me a question after all these years, Dharmesh, that I don't know the answer to, or at least can't even give you a stab at. He's a bit of a mystery to me. All I'll say is that Forest's record with goalkeepers is absolutely atrocious. They keep signing them and they keep getting them wrong. Eventually, one is going to go right. It's the law of averages.
Let's see if that man is Carlos Miguel. Before I let you go, Sam, let's just get a prediction, because we started talking about the Euros. Sunday is, as we record this, we're a few hours away from England against the Netherlands. So I'm not going to ask you a prediction for that, but effectively I am, because I'm going to say Sunday's final is Spain against...
Yeah, I think England are going to get to the final. I think it's a bit of a coin flip for the Netherlands game. Maybe 55-45 in one team's favour. At one point, the fact that we're more lucky than good is going to run out, but maybe we'll squeak through this semi, and then unfortunately Lamine Yamal is gonna humiliate us on the main stage.
Sam, thank you very much indeed, and thank you to everyone who is listening. And I'm going to do it because we remember and miss Pete so much. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, in your cars or on the train, in the wind or in the rain, in your house or in the shed, on your couch or in your bed, on the hills or in the valleys, in the streets or in the alleys, out for a run or maybe a walk. Thanks for listening to Transfer Talk.
And that's for sure.
Oui, that's my bit.